Hey everybody, this is Charlie Dobbins. I want to welcome you to this group coaching call, a call that we do twice a month, live. And this, as you can see here, we've got actually two potential topics: interview with an investor or preparing for the Shark Tank. And tonight is going to be the interview with the investor, and in 2 weeks we will do the conversation with the preparing for the Shark Tank. A lot of people don't quite understand what that means, and that's fine. Show up in 2 weeks and you'll really get a good education on exactly what you're going to need to do once you get that deal under contract. So let me do my typical housekeeping just to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. I sent out the schedule of events for March. I send it out to everybody on my mailing list, but it really only the people in the Masterclass Elite program can have access to a lot of the stuff that goes on in the course of a month. Obviously today we're doing the call, and in 2 weeks we're doing the call also at 8 p.m. for preparing for the Shark Tank. Note the change in times for March for my LA friends. We're now doing them at 8 p.m. We're going to do a couple of these at 8 p.m. We'll bring it back down to 5. But as you know, all of the calls are always recorded. You can always find them. I try to get them up within 24 hours into the archives. I don't think this one will be up that quickly, but it will be up over the weekend. So if you missed it, that's what's going on. And also because of the fact that I do record all these calls and they are up in the archives, you know, a lot of times this information that I start off with is not relevant to whoever is listening to this as a recorded call, but it'll just give you an idea of how we operate. Also, don't forget, make sure you register. There seems to be a disconnect between those people that are registering for the Masterclass group coaching calls and those people registering for the offer writing workshop. If you're in the Masterclass program, you have complete access to the offer writing workshop. You can come on that call. It's another live call on. We're doing it March 9th. It's once per month. This particular call came about as you know, feedback from some of the students that said they'd really like to see how to put an offer together, and so that's what I do on that one call per month. It's typically about an hour-long call, maybe a little bit more. Where in this particular case, one of our new clients, one of our new students in the program, had a property, and he really wants to see how I evaluate the deal. So I have all the information on my desktop right now. I have not opened up any of the files. I will open up those files on March 9th, and you can see how I look at a property from a case of first impression. I will take it right from the time I look at the offering memorandum all the way through towards choosing which letter of intent is correct, and then filling in the blanks for the proper letter of intent. So that's going to be on March 9th. Now, in addition, we also have on April 1st is really going to be the start of the first MFIA owner forum. Now, if you haven't seen the emails on this, this is the next stage of the masterclass. It's kind of ramping things up a little bit. I'm in the process of having the video produced. I shot the video yesterday. Having the video produced right now. That is the introduction to the owner forum. This is taking the masterclass to the next level. If you want to read about it, you can go to MFIA Masterclass /owner forum. No S, owner forum, and you can see the you know, what is essentially the sales page. I've opened it up to the first 10 people in the masterclass, existing in the masterclass program now, can get into it at a special rate. I think the 10 people have already filled up because it's a pretty good deal, and it's a great program. So go check it out. You know, tell me what you think. You know, give me a call. The first 10 people are at that discounted rate, but I'm opening it up to 40 people tops. This particular program takes a lot more of my time, so I'm really kind of going to put a cap on the amount of people that I'll let into this program. What you need to know, housekeeping part 2. Obviously, I have to say this, I'm a lawyer, but, and we all collectively say, I'm not your lawyer. I will act and conduct myself as an attorney. I will give you legal advice when it deems appropriate, and typically what my legal advice tends to always be is get yourself a good lawyer in the jurisdiction that you're looking in. I'm only licensed in Massachusetts. I am not allowed to practice law in any other jurisdiction, but I will always, conduct myself in that manner. But I don't want it to be misconstrued as being that I'm acting as your attorney. I'm going to be back in Los Angeles in mid-April. I'm going to be there speaking at 2 RIA clubs in the middle of 1 week, and then in the weekend, Duncan and I are doing another one of our joint sessions together. If anybody wants to find out more about that, just shoot me an email. I'm still putting together the locations. Duncan's pretty much got it all set up, but that should be a lot of fun. It's actually going to be out. I'll be able to get out there and see my daughter, who is doing her second semester senior year at Emerson, LA, and she is doing her internship at Playtone Productions, where Tom Hanks is the owner. And she's been there for 4 weeks, and I kept texting, have you met him yet? Have you met him yet? She said, no, Dad, no. Well, she got to meet him the other day. She was alone in the lunchroom, and who walks in but Tom Hanks, and that was kind of a cool story. I'll tell you that some other time. Okay, and also back by popular demand, we're going to be doing the due diligence boot camp again. You hear me say that this is a very intense weekend, not only for the students but also for me, and I try to keep it as limited as possible. But I got to tell you, a lot of the new students, this masterclass program has really taken off, and a lot of new students are really would like to attend the due diligence boot camp. So I'm planning that right now. I haven't set a date or a location, but I can tell you that after this winter, I will do everything possible to set this in a very warm climate because I'm so done with snow. So, and then the other thing too is if anybody has any questions and for tonight's guest, just type them into the question block. I will be checking them as we talk, and then I will be asking the investor. If I'm sure our guest here tonight is not going to have any objection, but I can also possibly take you off mute if you'd like to speak to our guest directly tonight, which I think that would be a really cool thing. So that's another concept as well. If you would like to speak to him directly, mention that in the question block, and I will get his permission to take you off mute. Okay, and so without further ado, please all welcome my friend Paul Worcester. Paul, how are you?
I'm great, Charles. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Let me kind of give everybody a little bit of background on Paul, and Paul, I'll let you fill in all the gaps that I'm not that familiar with. But I actually knew Paul before he knew me. Paul and I used the same accountant, property accountant, years ago. Paul has since moved on, brought it in-house, and I still use the same accountant. And I had heard about this guy out in Kansas City, and I actually had another client out in Kansas City that told me all about Paul and his brothers, and these guys were lighting it up. And then all of a sudden, I put the information out there for my last boot camp in Charleston, and Paul signs up and comes on down, and I finally got to meet you face-to-face, Paul. That was pretty cool.
That was great.
Yeah, that was a good time. Now, let me kind of why don't you tell us a little bit about where you are today, and then what I really want to do is back it up and start from the very beginning, how you got started, because I'll tell you something. I received a question from a new student today or yesterday where he asked me, hey, do you really think I can do this business? And I haven't responded back to him yet, but I kind of want to answer his question using your story. So tell us about where you are today. How well have you guys done?
Yeah, well, we are in the Kansas City market, and our company is owned by my father and my 2 brothers and I. We grew up in Oregon, and then we've been out in Kansas City since 2007. So today we own and operate with our investors. We syndicate. We do one-off deals, one at a time. And so today we own and operate 2,800 apartment units in the greater Kansas City metro area. We employ about a little over 100 people that all they do is manage and perform maintenance and construction on our properties. We're pretty focused. We don't own anything else. We don't own, we do own a handful of single families that we bought in a kind of a bundle, but basically everything we own is apartments. We don't own any retail, any commercial office. We don't look at flipping. We just we buy apartments that we are comfortable owning for 20, 50 years, and then we just manage them. And it's a pretty simple business model, but we feel that if we focus and simplify and don't try and be great at a lot of things, but just good at one or two things, that it gives us an advantage. A lot of our competitors are trying to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and we feel that sometimes that we get an advantage by being more focused. So that's a little bit, I guess, about us, Charles.
Okay, now I can tell you right now, when you said you own that many apartment units and that you've got almost 100 employees working for you, a lot of people here on the call, they just said, "Oh wow, I can never be like that," or "Oh man, I don't have the expertise, the ability to do that." Bring us back, Paul, because I know you didn't start this too long ago. I mean, how did all of you guys get started? Now, you started when you were out in Oregon, right?
Yeah, we graduated. So I'm 33, and my brothers are 32 and 30. And we were basically graduating college, and then my youngest brother, Jesse, who's in the business, he dropped out of college. This was 2006 and 7, basically. And we started our company at that time, and we bought 16 units. Well, let me back up a little bit. So we did not, a lot of people ask us of how we started, money and capital and connections. And
right.
There's a lot of assumptions, I think, when someone says we have 2,800 units, so that we kind of inherited a lot of it or something. And so this hopefully should be encouraging to someone who's starting out. We started out, my father is a pastor. He had a stroke 3 years ago. He's never been actively involved in the business, but he was a pastor of a church for 35 years. My mother's a third grade school teacher. We started our business with absolutely zero business acumen, business knowledge. We'd started a t-shirt company and failed in a year. We sold t-shirts on the campus of the University of Oregon. So we'd done a little bit of business basically as we were graduating college, but nothing of any significance. And my dad mortgaged his house, and we pulled out $200,000, and that's how we started the business. That was it. There was no benefactor, there was no inheritance, and so we took the $200,000 and we invested it in 16 units, and we lived on some of it. And the 16 units we bought in Salem, Oregon, was at really the peak of the market. It was 2006.
Right.
And so very quickly we realized this was not going to work to keep growing in the state of Oregon. This is the West Coast at that time, and the market had not crashed yet. So the gentleman who we bought the properties from moved to Kansas City, and we kept in touch with him. And I went out and visited him in 2007 and just compared Kansas City with Oregon. I said, my goodness, we can buy 3 times as much real estate for the dollar out here. And so my wife was pregnant with our first 6 months pregnant, and we just moved out here one after another. Within a year, we were all out here, and we started buying. We started small. We bought 42, 4, 6, 8 unit type properties from 2007 through 2009, and that's how we learned the business. Our uncle was an investor. He invested $50,000, and by the way, at this time, we didn't know what a syndication was. We didn't know what the SEC was. So he wrote us a check, and we signed a promissory note, basically. And then my brother's father-in-law invested in a handful of properties, and we just kind of got money, maybe a few $100,000 total in that period of time. We raised and invested it in small Kansas City area properties. And then we had another shift. About 2009, we started realizing this is just not a sustainable model. We had 40 properties. We're running all over the city. We have we have no office that we can, the properties are too small to have an office out of, and there's so many roofs, and it we weren't going to be able to scale our business by just continuing to buy fourplexes. And so we had kind of a light bulb moment, and we started looking at larger properties, and it was very scary. We had, I think, 12 units was our biggest property at that time, and then we bought in 2009, at the end of 2009, we bought a 60 unit, and then like 2 months later, we bought a 96 unit. And that was a very scary time because we made such a big jump. And you'd think that, oh, we had 12 units, jumping to 60 units wouldn't be that big of a deal. Well, to us it was. We just had never done that, and we're kind of in our comfort zone. So a lesson that we learned is, at certain points, it makes sense to leave our comfort zone. And so that was a big event for us where we did that. And so from that point on, we have just focused on larger apartment communities where we raise money, and we eventually learned that, hey, there's an SEC out there. There's a way to do things that you have to cover yourself, and so we pay an attorney to draft documents, and we raise capital. Typically about 2 or 3 investors to maybe about 10. I think 10 investors is the most we've ever worked with on a particular deal. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Oh, no, that is great stuff. Let's back up a little bit, because one of the things that you did early on is you picked up and you moved halfway across the country, and you started buying in a new market. What did you learn, or what did you have to learn quickly about working in a new market, a place you'd never been before? And Kansas City is kind of a, it's got its own little model, and what I mean by that is, you don't get rich overnight in Kansas City. The appreciation in Kansas City is slow and steady. And it went through that period years ago when they built new apartments, but those are older apartments now, and there's not a lot of new product in the marketplace in Kansas City. I mean, so you're looking at much older units typically in Kansas City. What did you have to overcome moving into that new marketplace?
Well, I mean, first of all, we just had to learn the market of, what is expectations for rents, what areas did we want to own, and so we started very, very, focused and small, and then worked our way out. I mean, we know Kansas City fairly well now, but I wouldn't even say I know. We've been in here, 7, 8 years now, and I still am learning a lot about the city. There's about 2 to 2.5 million people, depending on how far out you go with the metro area.
Right.
But I mean, so we started small, Charles, is the answer. I mean, we started in a submarket called St. Joseph. It's about 35 miles north of Kansas City. It's a submarket, and that's all we focused on. We didn't look at anything outside of there from 2007 through 9, and then we moved south into Kansas City, and we learned neighborhoods. We looked at everything we could, everything that hit the market, and I still do this today. Everything that hits the market, we try and go look at. Not because we think we're going to buy everything, but because it helps us learn. By offering and touring and meeting with brokers, we are able to learn a little bit each time we do that. So then when we do get a deal that we really like, we feel that we have a lot of information to base that opinion on.
So you started in more, if you would consider Kansas City as the primary market, you started your business more in a secondary market of St. Joseph's, where you probably had less competition for finding deals.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about how you were able to find your first couple of deals. Not the smaller ones, but when you started to move up to larger properties, how did you start to find those deals? What was the most successful way that you went?
Yeah, I'll tell you the first 2. So we bought a 60-unit property, was our first larger property, and it had been for sale for a long time, and the owner was out of Omaha, Nebraska, and it just wasn't selling. It was about 60% occupied, and it was just really wretchedly managed. I mean, if I told you the rents, you'd think I'm lying, but the rents averaged about $250 a month. And this was not an ugly, bad property. This is a property that had been rehabbed only about 15 years ago, and it was just really horribly managed. And so we got a hold of the owner. We called him directly. I don't remember how we found out, but we asked around, and I think we might have I think I might have walked in and just talked to the manager and found out. But we called him, and we found that he was he needed to sell. I mean, he wasn't in a good spot with that property. I'll put it that way. And so he then referred us to the bank that had the note on that property, and it was a fascinating deal, pretty complicated deal for our first one, but it was the fortunate thing that we had was this was 2009, and the market was in our favor, and so that was really, we were fortunate to be able to negotiate and get that under our belt. But basically, we would have paid about, I don't know, maybe $700,000 to $900,000, $700,000 to $800,000 conventionally for that property. But the bank was it was a small bank, and they were being, the FDIC was visiting them frequently. They had some loans that were in problem, and they really almost pleaded with us. They said, Paul, listen, we cannot take a haircut on this. We just can't do it. It's not. And so the debt was, I think, right at about $1.2 million. And so we made a deal with them where they financed us, and I think we put $80,000 down, and then they put $80,000, added $80,000 to the note balance, and that's how we bought that property. And it gave us tremendous financing. I mean, almost unheard of financing. It was a small local bank, and they fixed a loan for us for, I think it was 4% interest only for 9 years, and then the 20 years after that, or I guess it'd be maybe it was 17 years after that, but it fully amortized after that, and we had a cap on the. I mean, I think the max it can ever get is like 7%. I mean, it's just an unheard of loan for a local bank. I mean, they virtually can't fix debt, or at least I've never seen them be able to fix debt for more than about 5 years if it's a small bank. And so that was our first experience. It went really, really well. We literally had, and this was not due to us. Well, we worked really hard, so I will say that. But I would say that a lot of other people could have done this too. So it wasn't really us, but it was the deal. We had that property from about 240 to 250 average rent to about 500 average rent and 90% occupied within, I want to say it was like 90 days. I mean, it was just like a blink of an eye, and it was running well. And that property's cash flowed really, really well since that time.
Wow, that is fantastic. And I got to stress something here, and I said this in a blog post I wrote last month. You said you worked really hard on this deal. And the fact is that this, in any business, you have to work hard. And this business is no different, but the fact is that you get yourself a great deal now. It's cash flowing and 60 units. That's a perfect size. But, man, it's to go from that 60, all the way up to where you are now, 2,800, is it? Or 26 or 2,800?
Yeah, 2,800.
I mean, so from that was 2009 to 2015, you just closed on your newest deal. And it's like I tell people, you can own 1,000 apartment units in 6 years if you start this year with 20. You start this year with 20, and you just double how much you own every single year, and in 6 years you will own 1,000 apartment units. Now, the thing is that what you're doing now, it might kind of scare some people, and I don't mean this, as far as owning all these apartments, but you say you've got 100 employees. Now, I used to own an insurance firm. I had about 35 employees working for me, and man, I'm not looking to have a bunch of employees working for me. Tell me about the lifestyle of owning that many apartments. What do you do? What's a typical day in the life of Paul Worcester?
Well, we just hired a president. She literally started Monday. We've been courting her for a year, and so just to touch on the employee side of it is that is probably the hardest part of our business in a lot of ways. I mean, buying the property, financing it, putting equity and debt together, and closing is very important, because if we make a mistake on that, we can have the greatest management team in the world, they can't solve a problem if we paid way too much or bought it.
Right, exactly. The big, as I always say, the one thing you can fix anything on a multifamily property except overpaying for the property.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, so we hired a president that is handling the day-to-day operations of our company, and by that I mean everything but the investment side at this time. And so that is going to be a very big help. As of late, my brother Joel has been basically our chief operating officer, if you will. I mean, he's run the day-to-day, and we have 4 regional managers that report to him, but now they're all reporting to Julie, our president. So that is, and how we got there is it was, we didn't intend to have a management company, and I would advise a lot of people, not to. There's benefits and cons to having your own employees in your own management company. And for us, it was the choice we made, but I could see how a lot of people would not make that choice, and I wouldn't fault them. We started out and we intended to have third-party management, and we tried 3 local companies when we had 10 or 20 units. We started shopping them and having them manage, and they just did a really poor job. And this was when we didn't have any employees and we were managing it ourselves, and so we probably we were going to do a better job than virtually anyone, because it's all we were doing. Is we were obsessed with it. And so we just started hiring people. We hired a couple maintenance guys part-time, and we hired really early on. We probably only had about 100 units, and we hired a person that we really probably couldn't afford, but we would rather hire someone so we could grow quicker, and hiring her helped us get to 400 units a lot quicker than we would have if we didn't hire her. So, and I lost my train of thought on what was the question on how many employees or how.
Well, yeah, like a typical day in the life. But I know exactly what you mean when you're talking about hiring third-party management companies. This is where I differ with so many other guys out there teaching multifamily investing. Nobody is going to love your baby as much as you are. And, a third-party management company doesn't have that same feeling or risk, on their backs, when you're out there raising money from your father-in-law. And, that property has to run. And so, we ended up firing all of our property management companies and becoming the property manager ourselves. And, that really did make a change in the success of the property. And as I say, I honestly believe that the third-party management model is flawed just in the way it's set up. That they get 5% of the gross collected rents, but if they lose 20% of the tenants, what they lose out of their pocket is very, very small. What you lose is huge. And they won't work that hard to get that money back, but you will have to, bust your butt to turn that property around. So I just don't see, I've heard some great success stories. I think if you're looking at C-class property, there isn't enough money in the deal for a third-party property management company to make it work. And it's just, it's never. I've never seen the model work well on a Class C property for third-party management.
Yeah, I could see how that would be true. Yeah, for us it was not just the doing it better, which I think we do it better for the most part. We're still learning a lot and we're trying to improve, but I think we do it better. But also just for the experience. I mean, when a report comes out, we know how to drill down into that report, and we can ask immediate questions if we have them and get answers. And if an employee, if we, secret shop or visit a property, or an employee just doesn't show up for work or they're not doing well, I mean, we can make the change immediately. Whereas if we, if we have a third party, you call the regional and they say, well, we'll see what we can do, and we maybe run some ads, and it's just you're one of 10 that they're dealing with. And just like you said, Charles, you are a fraction of their income. And if the property decreases in its gross income or its net collected income, it really does not affect that management much. Whereas you know, we have fixed expenses. You know, we're running a business, and there's payroll, there's administrative costs, there's marketing, there's all these costs, taxes, insurance, and so for every dollar that you lose, it's a fascinating study. We've learned that you know, you drop below, you know, 85% or something, and it would seem like, oh, you know, it would just be a slow trend of losing. No, it's like amazing how quickly the dollars leave your pocket when you're below like 85 or 80% like that. On the other hand, when we're at 95, 96, 97, 98%, it's amazing how much money we make because there's fixed expenses, and so for every dollar up or down, it's like almost pure loss or profit. And so that was something we really had to learn a lot. Is it just makes so much difference to just run our properties in the, you know, low to high 90s and just to obsessively keep them there and to not let them go below.
You know, one other thing that threw me for a huge loop when I was using a third-party management company is, you know, I hire these companies to run my properties, and then, you know, from my business, my law firm, you know, little law firm out here in Massachusetts, you know, I have my own health insurance, and I'm paying for my own health insurance. And then one time I was out visiting one of my properties, and I asked my property manager to see what her benefit package looked like. And she showed me what she was getting for health insurance. She was getting an absolute Cadillac plan, first dollar benefits, $10 copays, whereas I'm doing a high deductible $1,500, you know, 3 times per family type of plan. And I'm thinking to myself, my property manager has a better health insurance package than I do, and I'm paying for it. And I thought to myself, this is crazy. I mean, this is how can the owner of the property have lesser benefits than the person that works there? That's why I realized, oh my gosh, this is just, we never even discussed this when I hired the property management company, but this is what they give all their employees, and I'm paying for it. So I thought, that's not going to work. That's not going to work for us going forward. So now tell me about your most recent deal. You were saying that this deal that you were working on was the best one you guys have come up with recently. Tell me about, first describe the property, and then tell us how you found it, how you got into it, how you closed it.
Yeah, this was our largest deal. We closed exactly 2 weeks ago. It's a total of about 440 units.
Wow.
Over two different properties, and it was a property that was a Section 42 affordable property for about 15 years, and then it went into foreclosure, and a hedge fund group out of New York bought the note, and then they were the ones that foreclosed on it, and then they didn't want to keep it. You know, they wanted to flip it and make a profit, and so it was not really formally marketed. It was a broker relationship, and it was sort of off market, but also through a broker, kind of a hybrid. And so we were, there was heavy competition locally to buy the notes on the properties, which was fascinating because we looked at these, and they ended up going to auction, and this group out of New York bought them, but they were very onerous on how you could buy these, because like they wouldn't let you see the units or the properties. I mean, there was no tours. And so we were not comfortable attempting to buy the note because of those reasons. It was just, there was too much risk, and so we just waited.
But hold on, let me just stop you right there. Even at the price of the note that you're looking to buy on a per unit basis, was it still a deal? Like, did you look at this and say, geez, you know, these things would have to be gutted inside for us to lose money on this deal? Or you just didn't even want to take that type of risk?
Yeah, there was some complications in there. We didn't know how much work they needed. The rent rolls were a little bit sketchy. There was 2 fires, which were kind of complicated because one of them was 12 units where there was we're still negotiating it right now. We basically assumed the claim, and it's, you know, $1.5 to $2 million claim. And so we, if we were going to be out that money, that was going to change the financials of it. And so,
Sure.
yeah, it was just something we weren't comfortable with. There was local bidders that bid up to very close to what the group ended up paying for the notes, but no, it was not something, we were comfortable.
So how did you end up with it, with all these bidders?
So then they sort of quietly shopped it with the, Hendricks and Partner was the broker, and or Hendricks Berkadia, I should say now. I guess it's just Berkadia. And so we looked at it. We were one of a handful that looked at it quickly, and then we offered pretty quickly, and we put. I can't remember if it was. Let me think if it was. It's been a while. We went under contract, and there was some delays because we were under contract. Charles, when was your event there? Because we were just, I think, going under contract at that time.
It was. Let me see. It was in the beginning of December.
Okay, yeah. So it ended up taking a while to close it. There were some delays that were not on our part, but the fire delays were one of them, and so I would say our relationship, the broker who sold it to us, he had sold me 2 other properties, so that was very important, and so we got a very early look, and then we made a great, solid offer, with significant hard money. I think we had $300,000 go hard within 20 or 30 days. It was very fast. Yeah, we took a risk. It was not. It's a risk-reward thing. We said we want to own this property in these areas, and they're in the best, county, the best quadrant of Kansas City. They're in by far the best. Johnson County is our best area of Kansas City, and so both of them were in there. And so one of them, they're both 1970 properties,
which is typical for Kansas City.
There's a lot of 70s properties. There is 80s and 90s, and I don't know. I'm not good at comparing to other markets, so maybe you write it out in comparison. But there is a lot of 80s and 90s and stuff as well. We bought some 80s, and we just bought last year a property that was built just 7 years ago, an A property. That was one of our first A properties. But these properties they're just in very good locations. They're infill locations, so all the new product is being built, or I should say most of the new product is being built further and further out. And so we're much further in and close to the city.
Now, just for clarification, you bought a fee simple interest in this property. You didn't buy the note, or did you make an offer on the note?
No, you're correct. The hedge fund bought the note. They foreclosed, and so then they owned the property for barely 30 or 60 days did they own the property before we were under contract. So we bought the property. Yeah.
Now, so how about your financing?
We did something we've never done, and it was a very big challenge for us, and I learned a lot by going through this. But we've up until that point we had done really only 2 things. We had done small local bank loans, and we had done Fannie Mae loans. And these properties did not fit as well because it was a large enough purchase. It was a purchase price of about $17 million, plus you're putting $5 million in rehab, so all in like $22 million, and that's a sizable loan for a small bank. You need to go with a bigger bank, and so that was a challenge.
Yeah, but hey, Paul, the banker would be sweating as much as you are on a $22 million loan.
Yeah, that's true. So that was tough, and of course there's recourse, which is always something of a challenge. And so, but they were not stable, so they could not go Fannie.
Exactly.
So we did a bridge loan, and we've never done that before, and we took a risk on that. And we generally are pretty opposed to short-term debt. This is a 3-year loan. I think we have extensions where we can go, a 4th and 5th year with penalties. But we've really never done that, and we don't like doing that. But on this particular property, we wanted to close it, and so we made a business decision to get it closed with a bridge loan. And it was complicated, and there was a lot of moving parts, and I learned a lot going through that. I mean, I learned for the first time. My brother is normally done those. Well, I learned very clearly what interest reserves are. My goodness, I didn't understand those. They made us set aside $300,000 for interest reserves. Well, they just sit in an escrow account. That was just extra money we had to raise, and they just sit there.
So they get paid. So the bank gets paid. Yeah.
Yeah, the bank sits on that money, and it's in case we, don't make a mortgage payment. They have that there. Well, it's just all it is more money that we had to raise, and it affected the deal negatively because we get no benefit from having that. And it was very there were some disappointing parts of that loan, but again,
how long do you have to keep that money in reserve?
I think it's 1 year, and then but see, it's 1 year, but then we just apply it to principal. We don't even get it. It's just
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was pretty annoying to go through some
Yeah,
of that.
but that's bridge financing. That's what you have to deal with when you're dealing with a non-performing asset.
Yep. Well, this was our first one, so Charles, so you've probably seen that a lot more than
I see it all the time. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Wow. And so anybody on this call should understand you started with your brothers back, almost 7 to 9 years ago with a 16-unit property. And today we're talking about a $17 million deal, 400 and some odd units. And that's just how this business operates.
Yeah, it is, and I like how you put that. A lot of people want to go to 100 and 200 unit, with their first purchase, and I absolutely think you can be successful doing that. At the same time, there's initially when we start something, we're at our highest level of ignorance and lowest level of knowledge, and we're at our highest level of risk. If we're going to make mistakes, it's typically going to be in the beginnings of something we're learning. And so I would much rather make a mistake, and we did make mistakes. We made mistakes on 2 and 4 unit properties, but guess what? They didn't kill us.
Right.
If we made a mistake on a 100 unit property on our first purchase, that could have easily put us under.
Exactly.
And so
as I say, if you do your first deal wrong, you'll never do another deal. If you do your first deal right, you're off to the races.
Yeah, and I see two things. I most of the time I haven't really seen myself. You probably have seen a lot more deals, Charles, but I haven't really seen people, do a big deal their first one. Actually, I got a friend who did it. He bought about 50 units on his first one, and he did fine on that one. But
is that a Kansas City? Is that a Kansas City friend?
Yeah.
Is that our friend from Kansas City?
I don't think it is. His name is Dan.
No,
I don't think it's the guy. Are you talking about Spencer?
Yeah, Spencer. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I can't remember how he bought his first one, but they had some commercial real estate, I think. But no, I wasn't thinking of him. But yeah, most of the time, the people I see sometimes at married groups is RIA groups, I should say, that a lot of times the challenge, and this is where I look back and I'm so thankful that we had that we just took action, and we took action at a pretty small. I mean, you asked what our first purchase was. I mean, one of our first purchases was a $12,000 duplex. We bought from a bank that had a $40,000 loan, and we bought it for $12,000. I mean, it's hard to go wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
It really you can't really mess that up. I mean, we're married. You're out 12 grand. It's like, and so I'm really thankful that we took action. And I see some people, they analyze and they want to jump into a big deal, but they just take so long, and then it becomes scary, and then they get tired, and then it gets, well, I haven't found it. And it's amazing when you just take action, new opportunities that you never would have seen materialize because of that work. So yeah.
All right. Well, we're coming up last 15 minutes of the call. Open it up to questions, and if anybody wants to speak to Paul, you want to talk to people directly?
Sure.
Okay. So if you want to speak to Paul directly, just raise your hand, and we'll will get you here. Now, I'm going to have, there was a question that was on here before we even started. I'm going to read the question. I'm going to let you answer it, Paul, and then I'll answer it, but we'll see if you and I come up with similar answers. And the caller says, the caller, I sound like a talk radio host. Charles, how can you properly fill out the cash flow analyzer when a broker only gives you 1 to 3 months of rent rolls? I have a couple of deals like that where I only have partial information on the rent rolls. I think the key here to the answer, Paul, is rent rolls. So what would you say to that, to this particular investor?
Well, I'll tell you what we do, and I don't claim to know exactly what you would do on this, Charles, but this is what we do. We look at it as a rent roll as a snapshot in time. Yep. And it is only showing the income and then the delinquency, but it's not we don't look at a rent roll as an operating statement kind of equivalent. It's not helpful in that way, and it gets confusing if we try and mix the two. So we look at the rent roll. We want, number one, we want a rent roll that's as recent as possible, because a rent roll of 3 or 4 or 5 months old can really change from where we are today.
Yeah.
And then we look at that as a snapshot, and we will underwrite. We'll put the date of that rent roll, and we'll insert on our underwriting. We insert all of the rents. We actually manually, we could do them something, less time, but we actually manually input all of the rents and come up with exact averages of where that is. So we want to know if there's a studio, what is the average rent on that? If there's a 2-bedroom, what is the average rent on that? And then furthermore, we want to know where the vacancies are. I mean, is there 4 vacancies on 3s and 18 on 2s? Because that, when you fill those up, your rent average actually might decrease, because if you fill up units that are lesser income than the average today with current vacancy, the stabilized or like 90% full rents can actually decrease. And so we put those in as a snapshot, and then we underwrite on the operating for the trailing 12 numbers. Exactly. So we'll take a 12-month, and we, some people don't have that, or they only have 6 months, and so we fight to get 12 months. I mean, we'll underwrite something with 6 months, but I'm not going to close until I get, oftentimes multiple year underwriting, because I want to be able to review those really carefully. So I don't know if I answered the question. I don't know why what are your thoughts about the rent roll, Charles?
Paul, you and I are right on the money. Absolutely, you answered it exactly correctly. It doesn't matter. You don't need 3 months of rent rolls or going back 6 months. When you get the deal under contract and you're going through the due diligence process, you will want to see that, but you'll also want to make sure that you're getting all the existing or upcoming rent rolls certified by the seller as being accurate. So you don't need 3 months going back. You do. This rent roll is a snapshot in time. It shows you exactly what's going on with the property right now. It's the trailing 12 that you want to see. If they're only showing you income and expenses for 3 months, that's where the problem lies. And then the other trick that the brokers play is they split up the income and the expenses, and they'll show you a T3 income and a T12 expenses, which is as bogus as you possibly can imagine. So don't ever fall for that. You want to get trailing 12 for both the income and the expenses. You want to see how the two of them correspond as over any period of time over the last 12 months. So yeah, that's exactly the right answer. You and I are on the exact same page with that. And I got to tell you something, Paul. It was really interesting to hear you talk in Charleston at the due diligence seminar, and I kind of want you to talk about this, because we're all using these cash flow analyzer software programs. They're great programs. They put together a very nice package, but all of them, no matter how good they are very static in their analysis. And the thing that you were doing and the way you were explaining how you look at a property was a very dynamic approach when you're looking at the rent potential on a deal. Like, the thing that amazed me when you were talking about it was how you knew, you're so tied into your market that you knew when you were looking at a particular property how far off the existing rents were from the market. and what that could potentially mean for that deal, and why you would go after a particular property harder than other deals because you knew you had that dynamic information, whereas other people would stick that number into a cash flow analyzer and say, oh, this deal stinks, I'm moving on to the next one. I mean, can you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, I've never been comfortable with looking at numbers on, and I'm not a big tech guy, and I've done a lot of underwriting, but now I have a couple people that do that for me now, and I've never been comfortable with inserting data I've never thought of myself as just an analyst, although it's ridiculously important, and I never skip this step. At the same time, it's just an incomplete picture. There's so many other pieces of data than just an Excel-based spreadsheet that says, it's a good deal, the cap's at least, 8 or whatever you're going for. Because that can be so deceptive, in my opinion. And here's an example. I'll just give one example. I firmly believe that, and people may disagree with me, I firmly believe that there are times when a property is running so well, it is just humming along so well, and maybe they have an absolute 100 out of 100 manager. Maybe the market hit a point with a local it's a student property and they leased up really well at one point. But I firmly believe there are times when I'm looking at properties all over in a submarket, and I'll look at a property and I'll say, my goodness, I don't think that these rents are sustainable. I think there's an aberration here. Either they're lying, which that happens. It absolutely happens where they will insert numbers that are not accurate. Here's an example. They'll say the rents are 600, but they're not counting, concessions and specials that lost to lease numbers. They'll take those out or modify those. And so I will look at the rents and I'll say, you know what? I just don't think 600 average rents are sustainable for this long term over a 20-year period. If I'm going to start today, hopefully they'll raise over time, but I think the rents are more like 560. And so I would actually be underwriting lower than that rent. And then there are times, hopefully when we're buying, when I look at a rent and someone else might underwrite that and it's a 7 cap or something, and I look at it and I come up with around a 7 cap or something, but I say, my goodness, if we just do a couple things here, I just fully believe if we change the office, we update the office and we put a little bit of money in the hallways and we maybe change fixtures, or we do some very easy to understand things. And we're not talking rocket science here. If we do these things, we maybe rebrand the property, put new signage, I just believe we can turn this to an 8 cap in a year. And it's not some great mystery or it's not a sure thing, but it's also really understandable how we would do that. And here'd be an example. There might be a property where the average rent is 600, but I can see for 3 months they've been increasing rents. They're getting for a rent that was a year ago, they're getting 600. The last 3 months they're getting 630, and yet the numbers that they're giving me are based upon a trailing 12, and I go, my goodness, if we just continue these rent raises, which again I have to believe we can do that, but if we continue this, it's like free money. I mean, it's just in a period of time when the turnover happens, you're going to get up to a higher NOI. And so I don't know if that answered the question.
No, but you raise a really interesting point one that I don't even think about all that much. Is you look at an income and expense statement, you're trying to figure out the benefits of the property, what's the value add proposition, and people are always looking, well, I can cut the expenses here and I can cut the expenses here. But very rarely have I ever heard anybody talk about not being able to sustain the income that's existing on the property now. And you look at it like, hey, geez, I know what the rents are in this particular marketplace. We can't keep that up. If I'm going to underwrite this deal, I've got to drop the rents. I mean, that's very rare. I've ever heard anybody say, I can't sustain the existing rents, so I'm going to underwrite the deal at a lower income level. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it like a business, like an apartment community is a little business. It's like a restaurant or a little retail shop. I mean, isn't it possible that a local, Radio Shack or a retail store just has an outstanding quarter? I mean, for whatever reason, maybe they moved a manager in to get the turn the store around, and they just, they had a sale, whatever. They just generated a lot of sales, and you just look like on a snapshot of that, and that can be deceptive. I think that it's possible. There's times where if we don't have a holistic understanding of, I mean, really, we try, and I read somewhere that Warren Buffett does this, and so we've been trying this, is analyze the data and don't have a price yet, right?
Right.
So if we actually don't know what they're asking, what is the purchase price? We don't even know. So I'll tell Brad, who works with me in the underwriting sometimes, and we haven't been as good at this as of late, but we've done this before where we'll underwrite everything. We'll look at the rents, the operating statement, we'll go through it in detail, but he won't tell me what the price is. And so then we'll say, okay, what do we think we would pay for this property? And that way the price doesn't influence us,
Exactly.
which I think is so important.
Oh my gosh, I say that to everybody. The biggest lie in multifamily is the asking price. So many people will do their analysis, say, oh, I came up with a price that's so far off from the asking price, I'm not even going to bother making an offer. Like, well, the asking price is a lie. Figure out do your complete analysis, and then come up with your price and submit it. And don't worry what the guy's asking price is. That's bogus. That is a made-up number, absolutely made-up number.
Yeah.
So, all right, I got this one final question that we have time for. If anybody else has any, try to sneak in under the wire. But here, let me read you this question. This is a great question. If there are 2 or 3 ways to source potential deals, which have you found to be the most successful?
So 2 or 3 ways.
How do you find your best deals?
Well, about a third of what we buy is never listed, and it's common sense. It's hard. It's simple to describe, but it's very hard to actually do it. But the way I visualize it is, so there's all these owners. And there's about 1,000 owners of size in our market, okay? And some of them own 50 properties, and some of them own 1. And there's all these owners, and they're living life. They have a manager, maybe they're self-managing, maybe they've got a huge management company, but they're just living life, running their businesses. And then there are times where circumstances in their life, maybe it's a financial thing, a divorce, maybe it's maybe they want to retire. Or maybe they just want to sell because they're tired and they just want to find another property. There could be a whole slew of reasons, but basically they want to or they have to sell. So my goal is just in simple layman's terms, I want to be in front of them as the first person the soonest possible when that decision is made. So how do I do that? I mean, we send out mailings. Every 2 to 4 months, we send about 1,000 postcards. And oh, by the way, this is something that I found we got a tremendous response on our last mailing. We listed our recent closings. I'd never done that before. We'd send out stuff, and we said, hey, we're Worcester Investments. We own this many units, and but it was still personal a little bit, but that was it. And this time I sent out and I said, hey, we closed on the Duquesne Apartments. Here's the address. Here's how many units it was. And we listed the 3 or 4 properties we closed on. Oh my goodness, Charles, it was amazing. We got probably 2 or 3 times as much response because I think people saw it's like, oh, it's real. That's a real property. Yeah. And so I would encourage, even if people are new, try and partner up and come together as a group and say, hey, maybe even my group and I have closed on, this property. So anything to add credibility, I think, is good. So
excellent.
Mailings are one. I mean, we subscribe to a couple. Now these can be expensive, but we subscribe to CoStar and Pierce Island, which we pay about $200 to $300 every month for each of those.
Yeah, but Pierce Island is fantastic. The information that they give is unbelievable.
Yeah, and CoStar, we didn't care for CoStar in our market for a while, but I don't know about in other markets, but I think they bought Apartments.com, and they're doing some things that they've been a lot better, in our opinion, in our market of late. I used to not care for their apartment data at all, but I think they're really making improvements there. But anyways, they list some amazing information, of which the information I like is they give you the darn phone numbers of the owners.
Owners, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably about 60 to 80% of the properties have accurate information. We just pick up the phone and we just call people.
Exactly.
Here's an example. We bid on a property. Here's an example. There's a 100-unit property we bid on, and this is, oh man, I always remember the deals we don't get, and they stick in my craw. But we missed out on a deal like 18 months ago, and it's a 100-unit deal, and it would have just been an absolute home run. And I was talking with the bank directly, and I don't know what I would have done differently. I hope I didn't get cocky, but I thought I was the only guy, and I gave him a great offer, full price, basically what he was asking. He was asking like $20 a door, and they're probably worth $35 a door. And I offered him, I said, 30 days of due diligence, and we'll close in, I think 60, and someone came right after me, and they put 50 or 30 grand down hard day one, and I kicked myself. Anyways, this guy bought it, and guess what? We called him last week, and he's the new owner. So he's the new owner of this property, the Evergreen Apartments, and we called him, and we have a meeting set up with him now, and he's a single-family home builder and nice guy and stuff, and he's open to selling now. Well, that would have been difficult without Pierce Island, because we literally just picked up the phone and called him and reached him within a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
So I would say those are, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think if you go back in the resources and archives section of the membership site, I did a webinar many years ago on Pierce Island. I believe it's in the resource and archives. If you can't find it, people out there, send me an email, and I'll go track it down and post it in the resources and archives. I think it's already up there. But the new investors in this call are thinking to themselves, oh, I can't call an owner. They'll just, they won't want to talk to me because I'm brand new. And like, guys, listen to who's on this call. Paul Worcester is the guy who's on the other end of that phone call. Does he seem like a nice guy, an easy guy to talk to? Like if you called him, Paul would talk to you and give you the time of day. That's what most of the owners are like. So don't be intimidated. Don't come up with your own personal roadblocks of why you can't pick up the phone and call the owners. You definitely can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, Paul, this was one of the best calls. Thank you so much for getting on. We're at the end of our hour now. I went over a little bit, but man, this was great. Thank you so much. And would it be okay if anybody has any questions or if they want to contact you, and I'll act as the filter. If anybody wants to send me an email, if they want to get your email address and connect with you and find out how you do certain things, would that be all right?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah.
Okay,
it was great to spend time with you, Charles.
Thanks, you too. It was great meeting you in Charleston. I'll let you know when the next due diligence seminars are, but yeah, this was fantastic. Thank you so much, Paul.
Okay, great to be with you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.